Well, we are here on Tuesday. We're here on Mardi Gras, the day before the Lenten season. Now we get into a whole different season tomorrow, as you know. And just to keep in mind, this Ash Wednesday is going to take us all the way through, because it's the Lenten season, all the way to June. I think June, May, late May, early June. Why? Because it's going to take us all the way to the end of the Easter season, because remember, right after Lent comes Easter. So we're going all the way to the end of the Easter season. So we're heading into this time where we go from Lent until Easter, and both of them are deeply connected. Remember, Lent is only 6 weeks, and Easter is 7 weeks. To communicate, we are Easter Christians more than we're Lenten Christians. Any concept that we're called to be Christians and sad and depressed and, we have to be careful. We cannot be happy, otherwise we may end up in hell. It's got to go out the window. Yes, I have literally met people like that. They're not necessarily Catholics, but they're, no, throw that stuff away. Don't listen to it. Remember, one of the signs of the saint is that he or she has a sense of humor. So if we are talking to someone, we must not be happy. We have to work hard to be sad and depressed and filled with Lenten penitence. Otherwise, then you know what? You're dealing with something right out of hell. That's what that is. That really is. Remember, joy is the sign of the presence of the Holy Spirit. So keep that in mind. Now, today's first reading deals with something right along those lines. It's really fascinating, right along those lines. You'll have this is something we have to be careful of. You're going to have these people who have you focused on avoiding sin. Well, but Father, this is that, I don't have a call screener, so no one can call up and talk to me about that. By the way, if you want to leave a message, remember our phone number is 617-297-7452. You want to call up and leave a message. I should do that more often so that people will do that. We can play your message on the air if you want. Hey, Father! Not that anyone talks, but, like I said, you have someone who has a few pops. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and they can call up and they go, hey, Father, I was just wondering, is it really true that if you wear purple year-round, you're going to heaven? No. Okay, so do you understand how that works? It kind of reminds me when I was doing public affairs radio, and we would take calls. This was long ago when I was in public radio. I don't know if you ever heard of this trick, but it's real. You try to get people to call, and so you have the secretary, do me a favor, call the call-in line, ask a question. You really do that because you want to get people to call. So you do it. Yeah, hey, I just wanted to know, just got to ask you a question. That really, really happens. So, yeah, if you have a public relations, when I was we used to take phone calls. There is a priest in the Archdiocese of Boston. I am not going to say his name. He's very well known. He's extremely well known. I'll put it that way. And I was doing a talk show. I was doing public affairs. I was talking about people who are teaching on acting. And he called up as Ralph Cramden. Really did. And he kept calling, and he kept calling back. He was really being a pain in the neck. And he just kept calling. So, eventually I just said, that's enough. And I cut him off, and people were shocked that I did that. People in the studio had no idea that I knew who this was. I figured out really, I drive a bus all day, and I don't know if I have time for acting classes, but, I'm really heavy. Did the whole Jackie Gleason thing with Ralph Cramden, calling on my show, my public affairs show, talking with people teaching acting. So, yeah, he is a priest in the Archdiocese. We were seminarians at the time. He is a priest in the Archdiocese of Boston. If you happen to know when I was in the seminary and who was there at the time, you'd pick it up immediately. You'd know, I know who that was. So, yeah. But anyway, we won't communicate that. But it's really true. You need a good sense of humor. And if you get anyone who gets really who's really pushes this sadness and, we have to work really hard to avoid sin. Now, obviously you want to avoid sin, but you know what? First of all, remember, the just person sins 7 times daily. So if you turn around and say, I don't sin, well, you know who teaches this? None other than Bishop Reed. And what does Bishop Reed do? Bishop Robert Reed, does that name sound familiar? I hope it sounds familiar. He runs Catholic TV, which is, it's its own entity, Catholic TV. It's not connected, not specifically, might be connected in a way to the Archdiocese of Boston, but it is, just because, if you take in a business sense, they run their operation in the whole bit, but it is clearly rooted in the Archdiocese of Boston, and it has its history in the Archdiocese of Boston. By the way, for those of you in the Boston area, TV38 was the early days of Catholic TV. TV38, yes, it was. It was I think it was WIHS, or maybe it was WSBK, but I think it was WIHS. The early days, but it may not have been WI, but it was literally Catholic TV started on Channel 38. And now, of course, it's on cable, and you can find Catholic TV anytime you want. So, but Bishop Reed has taught that on Catholic radio, which I am not connected to. I'm not connected to the Archdiocese in this program. I am in what I do, but I'm not. This is not connected to the Archdiocese of Boston. Used to be, but not anymore. It has nothing to do with them saying, "Don't say us." Nothing to do with that at all. It's just the way things worked out on a business sense. So, in that understanding, seeing that we are not connected, but Bishop Reed, he's taught on Catholic radio, and this really does happen. People come to confession and confess they don't have any sins, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of coming to confession in the first place. But they do. They come to confession, and it's not that often, but you have people, and he will say, as he said in radio, that means that since the Bible teaches the just person sins 7 times daily, I've sinned more times since I woke up this morning than you have sinned in the past 3 weeks. Does that sound correct? That's one of the things he taught on Catholic radio. That's true. So, sin is not something you're going to stop doing, but because what you're going to find out is if you find yourself overcoming one sin, you're going to find another one that the Lord is going to tell you to overcome. And that's just the way it is. Why? Because he's leading you down a path to the crown of life and the kingdom, to draw closer to the Lord. But what does sin do? Sin turns you away from the Lord and makes you blind to all that the Lord can do for you. And you can do, and so that's what sin does. So sin leads you away from the Lord. Pope John Paul II explained that, what happens with mortal sin is it kills, it's not so much that you commit a mortal sin, you're going to be on your way to hell. What he talks about is mortal sin is real, and these are obviously grave sins. And what they do is they destroy your charity. Do you understand? And it makes you more and more selfish. And that's what mortal sin is. And he says, well, you can end up in hell. Yeah, because that's where selfish people go. Remember, hell is not a place, it's a state of being, just like heaven is not a place, it's a state of being. What? Who taught that? John Paul II. I think it was 1999. It was in July and August 1999. He gave 3 catechesis, what do you call them? These audiences. I kept thinking the word assembly. These 3 audiences he gives, the Pope's give an audience every Wednesday. So these 3 weeks, he gave one on heaven, one on purgatory, and one on hell. So in those cases, he said it's not a place, it's a state of being. And sometimes you can meet people who are in their own hell. You can see them all the time. I talked to you yesterday about the people who are in denial. Yeah, my house just burnt down, but that's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. I literally have met people like this. That's okay. No, it's not okay. But what happens is, what you find is people, well, kind of putting it this way, what is the thing I teach? I want my world my way is the source of all evil. And so hell would be an example of people who would be demanding the world their way and unable to understand that's not possible. The world doesn't work like that. It's just literally not possible. It's like if you walk into, if you walk into an ice cream that has like a whole bunch of flavors, but you want broccoli ice cream, and there isn't any place in the world that sells broccoli ice cream in theory. I don't know if they're. And you aren't going to be happy, and you say, I'm not going to leave here until I get my broccoli ice cream. Well, you're not going to leave there then, because no one has broccoli ice cream. I'm just saying this off the top of my head. And do you understand? That's what hell is. Hell is you want the world your way. I don't need God. I can have my world my way. And it's just one frustration after the other. And if you put a whole bunch of people into that who think the same way, I want my world my way, that's what your hell would be. Do you understand? It's an attitude that it's not a place, it's a state of being. It's an attitude where there's no charity. I want my world my way. I don't care about anybody. I care only about me. And that's what sin leads you to. That's why repentance is so important. What confession really is. People, this was so poorly taught. It's horrendous. Confession is your ability to go to the Lord and ask for help and forgiveness so that you may receive his grace in continuing your journey down the path. And you've reached some kind of a traffic jam, you could call it, or whatever you want to call it, a problem area. And it's just the Lord saying, okay, I need your help, Lord. Please help me. I've fallen into whatever sin, and I need your help, and I need your help to come out of the sin. That's all. But the way it was taught was, I think, right out of hell. You have to go to confession before you receive the Eucharist if you have a mortal sin on your soul. Otherwise, that's a mortal sin and you will end up in hell. If I remember, I got to add an echo to that. If I remember. If you don't hear an echo, you say he didn't remember. He's 67. You just have to get over it. He's 67. He forgets a lot of things. That's the whole bit. So, yeah, but you see what I'm saying, and that's how confession was taught. Otherwise, you're going to end up in hell. Oh, gosh. No, you're going to the Lord. You're struggling. You want to draw closer to the Lord, and you've got something in your life that becomes whatever, and you need his assistance. And, and the Lord gives us that grace that helps, that assistance. But for decades, for a century, this was taught, maybe more, this was taught wrong. And the traditionalists still embrace this ridiculous teaching. And it's wrong because it turns people into following these black and white rules that lead them away. And then they don't understand the gospel. They don't understand the call to live the gospel and where the Lord is leading us to be people of love. They're just focused on rules and turning away from sin and not coming to know the Lord. And that's what happens. But that's what confession is. It's really called to help you draw close to the Lord. And the Lord is leading you. It's to remind you that the Lord is calling you to draw closer to the Lord. Plus, the other thing, keep in mind, is confession cuts off any binding from the devil through your sin. I don't want to get too much into this. This is why these online exorcists really send me through the roof. They really send me, because what do they teach you? They teach you, the devil could be working with you and then you have to go to an exorcist. No, the most powerful form of exorcism is the sacrament of reconciliation. And what really irritates about this is why I despise these online exorcists. I hate these online exorcists. Someone said that's a little bit too strong. Okay, you're right. So I don't hate these online exorcists. We're called to love everybody, including these online exorcists. But I really, really dislike them intensely, which we're allowed to do. And because they just teach, you need to be free of the devil. No, you've got a tool that helps you do that. It's called confession. One sincere exorcism is more powerful than 100 one sincere confession, rather, is more powerful than 100 exorcisms. Exorcists have explained that to me many times. Real exorcists who, not the ones online aren't real exorcists, but just keep away from them. We'll be right back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Did you know that the Catholic Audio Media Podcast is available on various podcast platforms? You can find us, among others, on Podbean, which is our home platform. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart, among others. Just look for Catholic Audio Media, all one word. On some platforms, such as Spotify, look for Catholic Audio Media, 3 words, and subscribe and listen to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. We're back, and so we've been talking the past few days, actually not just this week, but a little bit of last week too, about preparing for Lent. So what I was saying to you yesterday, do not consider watching Catholic videos a good idea of how to live for Lent. Because they're not. They're really not. Even me. If you're listening to me already and you want to let people know, but don't use this as your Lenten practice. My Lenten practice, I listen to Father Bob Carr. Please don't. Listen to me, yes, but don't make it your Lenten practice. But, you want to find some. So like we talked about maybe reading something, spending more time in reading. I'm telling you yesterday, do not watch, depending on the source, but for the most part, no. And don't watch this Catholic stuff on YouTube. And some of the other things to look into is finding a practice to get involved in, to kind of experience more, maybe do a more study. And again, you don't have to be in school to study. Maybe study of some of the issues that are out there. One of the great issues we're dealing with right now is immigration. And we're looking at immigration from different points, and the church looks at it one way, the government looks at it another, the Democrats look at it one way, and the Republicans look at it another. And the real source of the problem with immigration is our immigration laws need updating. That's one of the most important things. Many people, I was reading somewhere, I don't know the source, reading somewhere that someone said, their relatives came over and they didn't come illegally; they came legally. Well, back around the turn of the 18th and 19th century, so the immigration laws were very loose back then, so it was very easy to come into the country legally. And then things get tightened up as the century went along. But when they say, they came on, they followed it. Well, the rules were, people came in through Ellis Island, and that's how everything worked out. And there wasn't any specific rules. And there was rules for citizenship, but everything else. But then now you're coming into, the rules were tightened up over the decades during the 20th century, needs to be updated a bit. President Trump tried to update these in his first term, and people didn't like Trump in the Republican Party, and the Democrats were fighting against him. And so who ended up suffering these immigration laws? Now it's turning into a point that even the Republicans are turning around and saying we've got to update these immigration laws. And that's one of the issues. So one of the issues there is this updating. What's the other thing that happened with this immigration thing? And these are things to look at. And how is this involved with Lent? You'll see. These are things to look at. What is it that was the campaign promise? We're going to do the biggest deportation program this country has ever seen. To tell you the truth, it is based a lot on what Eisenhower did during the 1950s. So that's what they said. And then they're coming along and they're starting to deport everybody, and people are getting really upset. And they said, well, we're really only going after the criminals. Well, no, that's not what you said during the campaign. That's not what you appear to be doing. And people are angry at this. And now it's kind of blown up. And now they're turning around saying, no, we need to focus on going after the criminals first and all that. Well, there's something else that you got to realize that's at the bottom of this. And this is something that, so you can't just look at, well, this is immigration, one of the, as you're listening to certain TV pundits on certain networks on both sides. What you may not realize is what's at the bottom of this whole immigrant issue. Believe it or not, it is the Achilles heel. I don't know if Achilles heel, but the weakness of our U.S. Constitution. That fine line between states' rights and federal authority. That is always the issue. Whenever you see a major issue break out in parts of this country, it's always that line between states' rights and federal authority. There you go. And that's exactly what's going on. We have to get rid of these sanctuary cities. What are sanctuary cities? We want to handle immigration our way. Okay. And we stand on states' rights. Well, the federal government says, no, but this is an issue that should only be dealt with the federal government. Where is the dispute? That fine line between states' rights and federal authority. That's always going to be an issue in our country because it is built into our Constitution. And it's an important part because if you get rid of states' rights, then you open the door to what the founding fathers did not want to see, which was centralized authority. But as we found in the Articles of Confederation back before the Constitution, if you have too much states' rights, then you don't have any cohesion of the country. And so it's a real issue on both sides. So there's always this balance. But if you're looking, well, there's states' rights and rather these sanctuary cities are nothing more than standing on states' rights. So where is the resolution? Shutting down sanctuary cities? No. It's, again, defining what we have to do all the time in this country, that fine line between states' rights and federal authority. But do understand, and we learned that in our show from when we were back on radio with Mark Shea, the Catholic Church believes in subsidiarity. A way to consider subsidiarity is to deal with an issue at the lowest authority possible. There you go. To deal with an issue at the lowest authority possible. So the church in this country is very much in favor of states' rights. Why? You deal with an issue at the lowest authority possible. And you only go to the highest authority possible when you absolutely need to. I have a feeling, I could be wrong here, but I have a feeling that President Trump works like many executives do. I could be wrong. I could be completely out to lunch here, which he lets departments run their policy as necessary, whether you like it or not. I'm just saying, because this is the way companies run. And if an issue ends up on his desk, then that means that no authority below him was able to deal with it correctly. And so now he's going to step in. That's the way a lot of companies work. If you bring something to the chief executive, then the chief executive is going to deal with it. So if you don't want the chief executive to deal with it, don't bring it to the chief executive. Solve it on your level. Now, one of the things we saw in Minnesota, which was this whole explosion that happened, and it was a leadership issue. And what happened was, again, it all comes down to, even though you saw this whole thing explode and the whole bit, what was at the bottom of it? And we know people saying that there is corruption issues that they're trying to take off. That's a separate issue. That may be true, but that's a separate issue for a separate discussion. That's not where I'm focused on right now. What were people doing? It was, we want to handle it our way, and the federal government says, no, you can't. And what was the resolution? The resolution was Tom Homan came in and he said, let's work out a deal so we can take care of the worst of the criminals. We don't have to have ICE on the street. We don't have to have Border Patrol on the street. Let's do that so we can solve this issue. And then how did he finally deal with this? Now we have a whole bunch of ICE officers that are leaving Minnesota. And what is he saying? The sanctuary city issue needs to be dealt with in Congress. What does that mean? The fine line between states' rights and federal authority needs to be defined again. That's all. That's how our country works. So one of the things to think of in Lent is, where are you getting? Who is trying to communicate to you? Who is trying to draw you on their side? Spend some time doing more reflection of the issues going on in our world within the context of what our Catholic faith teaches. It's something else to promise yourself as well. And do some really good reading. You can excellently, that's really good. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're here every single day, Monday through Friday, workday anyway, on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be right back right after this. Do you have any thoughts on what topics we should cover here? Do you have any issues you would like us to address here? How about questions you might have? Would you like to audition for a volunteer segment? Then write our program at producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. That's producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. Let us know what topics you would like us to discuss about your Catholic faith. We will consider them, and if they are fit for the show, we'll put them in. Producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. Well, today, of course, is Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, also Carnival, and everything else. It's the day before Ash Wednesday, so tomorrow Ash Wednesday comes in. Remember what I said yesterday? I'm pretty serious about it. If the only reason you're going to get your ashes so you can walk around with ashes on your forehead and you do not practice your Catholic faith, please don't. Don't. You're just wasting ashes, you're wasting a resource, and you're taking it from other people. Don't. Be who you say you are. Well, it's my Ash Wednesday. I need to get ashes, but you don't go to church every day. Every Sunday. You haven't been to church since the Ford administration. Well, but it's Ash Wednesday. I got to get my ashes. Don't. Because that's what it means. When you receive your ashes on your forehead, it's like a recommitment to your spiritual life. And if you have no intention of doing that within the Catholic context, then don't get your ashes. But if you do have an intention, then really be pretty intent about it. Now, again, my whole thing, which I will talk about later, is don't give up candy. Definitely do not give up candy unless it's really going to be part of your Catholic discipline. But aside from that, come up with some really good practices that are going to lead you deeper in the faith. And I'll give you a suggestion if you want to start reading something. The Hint of an Explanation is one of my favorite short stories by Graham Greene. read that. It's going to change your whole focus on the Eucharist. And if you read it very carefully, like you learned in school, it'll change it even more. We're going to be back on Ash Wednesday tomorrow. See you then. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.